straight shooter, industry icon known for streamlining business operations and creating massive growth. Howard M. Shore is the man whose insight and strategies have put him in the wheelhouse of companies worth millions and billions.
I want you to learn the language of finance for CEOs and for leadership teams.
He had tons of ideas, tons of takeaways that I could take back to my company.
Having built and sold his first business for a 5x return by age 21, Howard is the founder of 6 different companies, one of which is Activate Group Inc., a company focused on helping executives and teams launch their companies into rapid growth mode, becoming, as Howard calls them, high-velocity organizations.
The majority of your employees are not held to a really high standard of performance.
As the strategic guru behind Fortune 500 brands like AutoNation and Ryder Systems, Inc., Howard's influence for Ryder alone identified over $350 million in profit opportunities and helped them build and sell Ryder public transportation services at an 8.6 times multiple for $1 billion.
Every interaction, every moment, you have a choice. You can either do it or not.
A business strategist for over 30 years, Howard is the best-selling author of the book, Your Business is a Leaky Bucket, and is a world-renowned speaker and business mentor. As a licensed CPA with education from Florida International University, the University of Chicago, and Harvard Law, Howard's experience and expertise in identifying profit roadblocks and boosting business growth is unmatched.
He takes people who want to go from here to here, and instead of them going all around the circles and everything else, they just go in a straight line and they go exactly where they want to go.
Howard does not mince words. His stage presence is raw, direct, and overflowing with pointed content. Howard has spent decades passing on his wisdom and insight to inspired audiences all over the world. Author, speaker, mentor, and elite business strategist, Howard M. Shore.
I am really excited to be here today. This is an awesome group. Let me ask you, how many of you would like to have more success? That's awesome. All right, how many of you would like to have more success and work less? All right, so I just came back from my CEO group. I just spent three days out in Sarasota, and every time I come back from that group, I realize I need to 10x what I'm doing. And what I want to help you figure out today is that you need to be 10xing what you are doing right now, and you can actually do it without working harder. Would you guys like to learn that today? All right, perfect. All right, so that's what we're going to talk about today. So actually, this was funny, and this case was not actually set up for you guys. It's my normal speech, but it's actually a restoration contractor, so the other side of the business. We've done a lot with restoration contractors, but it's an ideal case of an example of a company that came to us, and they were already really good in their industry. Usually I come in front of a crowd and I have to tell people what a restoration contractor does. I don't think I have to tell you guys what they do, right? But Russ Palmer comes to me and he says, listen, Howard, I've been working with an advisor for the last 5 years, and we've done really well, but we've hit a plateau. And all of us, you heard I've owned 6 companies, 3 of them are still active. We hit plateaus, right? And he's like, Howard, I've grown, it's taken me 20 years to get to $7 million. This is just not acceptable. And he says, I know my organization has a lot more potential. I have great employees, but somehow I'm not getting as much as I can out of them, and I hear you can help me. So he says, what I want to do is I want to double the size of my company over the next 3 years. So now I want you to fast forward, and now imagine 3 years later, you've tripled the size of your company. And now you've unlocked the majority of all your employees. Your profit margins have doubled. You're working half the amount of time. Well, that's what happened when we worked with Titan. And that's what happens with a lot of the organizations we work with. And what I want to share with you today is that it's actually not as hard as you would think to do that. After working with hundreds of companies, we figured out there was kind of a formula to do this. And it wasn't working harder, it was working smarter. So what I want to do with you today is I want to share with you that, first of all, it starts with this. Everyone in the room, we all need coaches. And what I want you to know is for the last 20 years, I've had a coach. I work with different coaches for different things in my business. It even starts with personal training. So I have a personal trainer. I've been bodybuilding since I was 13 years old. I have a gym in my house. So at this point, I know how to work out. All right, I know the exercises, but I work with a trainer. And the reason I do is, man, that bastard makes me do things I wouldn't do to myself, right? Do you guys know what burpees are? Who the hell came up with that, right? All right, he makes me do burpees, he makes me run steps, he makes me do more pull-ups than I would ever do. And because of that, at 54 years old, I'm in much better shape than I would ever have been thanks to that bastard, all right? Well, honestly, that's what my coaches have also done with me. And that's what we usually do with people. So the reason I share this with you is too often we get with companies, we've done everything with 1 million to over billions, right? We get with leaders and they're really proud. They're like, they can't wait to tell me how great their team is and how sharp the people were that they hired. So, hey, we don't have to manage them, right? I hired people, so I don't have to manage them. And they're so good that we just leave them alone. We don't have to train them. They're really good. And I'm like, do you realize how much money you're leaving on the table? Do you realize that because this is the way it is, you could be here and you're just here? Because you're not pushing them to do the burpees. There's no one pushing these people to get that little extra. And by the way, those little few extra percents of extra effort, it's not 1 + 1 + 1 = 3. In my first book, you'll see it's usually 25 to 50 in net profit growth. It's usually 100% in top line growth, just giving 1% efforts. So the reason I share this is I was upset that I was proud of creating billions of dollars worth of value at this point in my career. And then this jerk writes this book recently about the $1 trillion coach. And I'm like, God, I suck, right? But it came out because Mark Zuckerberg, Steve Jobs, and some really awesome people, Eric Schmidt at Google, they all had the same damn coach. And he didn't want anybody, he was really humble. And he's like, I don't want everybody to know what I'm doing. But he was working with all these awesome executives and their teams, and they all wanted to write a book when it was done, when he passed away recently, God rest his soul, awesome coach. What Eric said when he was done, and this is why he wrote about the $1 trillion coach, is we would have never created trillions of dollars worth of value without this guy kicking our ass. All right, it never would have happened. So I'm going to tell you right now, normally I go into rooms and in the room, I ask everybody to raise their hand because all their other leaders are in the room and sometimes they're employees. And I ask everybody to raise your hand who has a coach right now. And very few hands go up. And what's interesting is their teams, their team members in the room. So that means their team doesn't believe that their leader is their coach. This is a disaster. Okay, that means that the senior person is not doing their job. So this is my first lesson to you, is that the people that report to you don't see you as their coach, you are not doing your freaking jobs. That is my number one job as a CEO. I have 3 companies. I spend every other week with every one of my direct reports. My number one job, that meeting with them is not to hold them accountable. It is to unlock their full potential. And by the way, I love the concept of untapping potential because it's unlimited. You all have more potential than you've reached right now, and you're probably in your mind holding it back, and you have to help your people realize they're holding themselves back, and whatever they've reached, even if they're your top performer, they can 10x it. Right now, with one of my clients, and I don't usually work with anybody below the C-suite, they're like, listen, our top producer who does 10 times, actually you take all their other producers together, is complacent. So I started working with him, and right now we're working on how to 10 times his book of business. And he is so excited because he realized he was just happy with his book of business. No one was challenging him. No one was getting him excited anymore. Because since he did what everybody else did combined, it was easy to get complacent. But he's so good that we can do 10 times that. So you challenging everybody to do that. So everybody in this room who does not have a coach, I'm going to challenge you, find one. And everybody who's not coaching their people, that's my first lesson to you. Coach your people and then watch it happen. So that's my first lesson to you. The second lesson I want you to learn today is about conditions affect performance. So think about just driving, right? We're out on the road and it's raining a little bit. It gets cloudy, the clouds come down. It gets dark. What happens to our driving? What happens? We slow down, right? We get cautious. All right, some of us that don't see well at night, sometimes we don't even want to go out. My wife and I were usually arguing, well, maybe you should drive. No, you should drive. We're just like, the hell with this, right? It's not the same as when conditions are like this, right? When conditions are like this, I just came back from Sarasota. I drove over yesterday. It was pretty hard for me not to get a ticket in my car. I'm just like, I own the road. And actually a year ago, Sylvia's like, she bought me for Father's Day one of those radar detectors. She's like, these tickets are pretty high, Howard. You're getting too comfortable, and we really don't own the road. But see, the idea of this concept is we as leaders are not doing a good enough job of creating these conditions for our employees. We have to create the environment. We have to create vision so they know where we're headed. We have to make it very, very clear, all the expectations. And the clearer we make the road, the easier it is for them to do exactly what they need to do with no friction, and they can just hit the pedal to the metal and go, right? But the problem is we are naive and arrogant, and we think we've done this, but what we've really done is the other slide. And so they're slowing down. They're cautious, they're hesitant. And so I'm going to share with you a few of the things of why that's happening. Do you guys want to know? Are you with me here? You getting what I'm saying? I like to speak simple. I like not to be complex. I worked with too many complex people in the big companies. I couldn't stand it. They're way too complicated. I'm going to keep this stuff simple. So this got me really excited. This is what gets me up in the morning and makes me realize how much work we have to do. So about 20 plus years ago, and maybe a little bit longer, I'm getting older than I like, I was the head of strategy at Ryder Systems, $6 billion company, really proud of our teams, and I thought I was a great leader, and then I realized I sucked. And actually we realized as a company, and we're one of the leaders in the industry, we're really proud, and Gallup comes in, and they do their Gallup survey, this magic 12 questions. Are you guys familiar with Gallup? Anybody familiar with Gallup? We do this Gallup survey. We were no better than this. And basically, this is their latest study and it just came out 2 years ago, and it improved. But it's only improved 2 percentage points in the last 20 years. So with companies spending billions and in training and consulting and coaching, it only improved 2 percentage points. So I'm like, man, we've got work to do. And what it said is only 33% of all workers in the US and Canada are fully engaged. That means they're all in. They're excited about their jobs. They're excited about your companies. And they're giving full all-in effort. Only 33%. That means the other 67%, you know it, right? You know, you're looking at those people and you know you're getting half, right? Right now, can you think of some people on your teams and you're like, they got more to give me? They give it to you sometimes, but most of the time, no. And there's only the few, and it's definitely you in the room, right? And that's why you guys are the top performers, that are giving you all effort. And then usually it's, the 80-20 rule. 20% of the people are, they're killing it, and the other 80% is like, what the hell? Why am I paying them, right? But it's all about this. So it's more like 33%, okay? And, maybe you guys are a little bit above the norm, but I'm going to tell you, usually when we do these surveys inside of companies, it's more like that. And so that means 51%, it used to be 55, 51% of employees are what they call not engaged. So they're doing the minimums. You're not going to fire them because they're doing the minimums, so they're not going to get fired. Once in a while, they'll give you extra effort. But, they're like, I got to get home. I got to get on that ball field. I'll hit my numbers once in a while. But they're not giving that extra level of service, really developing those relationships the way you need to. They're not all in like you. But you can do it. And I'm going to show you how to do it. And then the 16%, these people really piss me off. They're the actively disengaged. And what's happening is they're undermining what the engaged did. And I'll give you an example of this. So I'm at Contractors Connection, all right? And I'm at this trade show, and this young lady comes up to my booth, and I think it was Stanley Steamer. She was one of their new reps, one of the new salespeople. So I played around with her, and I said, so why would I buy one of your franchises? And she couldn't give me her value proposition. So I said, I left the people on my team at the booth, and I said, let me go over with her. Let me walk with you. Let's go over to your booth. Let's go meet some of your other people. And I hate throwing them under the bus, but I figured I got to throw them under the bus a little bit. So I go down to the booth, and they have this guy here, and he says something like veteran, right? He's been around a long time. So I asked the guy, is at the booth, and so veteran, what does that mean? He says, I've been around 30 years. I said, awesome. Tell me, I'm in the market. Why would I buy a franchise? He says, confidentially, I wouldn't buy one right now. Holy crap, that's actively disengaged. Now imagine the new young lady. Yeah, the new young lady is like, what the hell did I just sign up for? But this is what happens. This is what happens when they get actively disengaged. And this guy's getting paid at a trade show to represent the company, and he's actively disengaged. And you got them in your organization. You have them, and we got to stop it because this is madness. It's killing your company. What I want to talk about today, and we're going to do a few exercises there because I want you to apply this. I want you to go home. I want to create millions today. You guys want to create millions today? And it's going to be simple. It's going to be so damn simple. You're going to be like, this is ridiculous, all right? I want to talk about some stewardship today. So what I realized is executive team health or team health is key. We've got to talk about purpose and culture, and we combine these three things. When I went back to this, and I really went to go understand the Gallup survey and what was the difference in that Gallup survey, I learned a few things. The first thing I figured out was 70% of the causal effect, that's 67% not being engaged, were the managers. Us in the room. And I'm saying us. I still got a lot of work to do. What they said is they went underneath the numbers. Only 22% of the employees that worked, and by the way, it was 22 million respondents for that last survey. All right, across, I think it was 167,000 companies. This was a good sample size, folks. And these were great companies. These are not like run-of-the-mill companies. And that's what they came up with. And they said only 22% of workers that responded felt that their leaders had a good vision for the company. Only 22%. And only 15% of those workers felt that their leaders got them excited about the future. No wonder they're disengaged, right? And then only 13% felt that their leaders communicated well. These are things we can fix, right? This is what got me excited. I'm like, man, we can fix this. This is not rocket science. I don't have to go and get a CPA. I don't need a master's degree to fix those things. I just have to stop being a jackass. I got to do my job as a leader. I got to stop working in the business, and I got to start working on it and start being a leader. All right? And that's really what that survey taught me. And the other thing it taught me, though, was the number one decision I made, leaders are not making a good job of, is who they named as manager then. Because when you went from department to department, people doing the same thing, the engagement numbers were very different in the same company doing the same things. So be very careful who you name as manager. But this is leadership here, folks. Where are we headed? What's our purpose? What is it we are trying to do? And I'm going to talk about that deeply in a little bit. How do we build culture? But I want to start with team health first. I find this a lot with particularly companies that have already been winning. One of the things I like to challenge people is, are you still playing to win? Or are you playing not to lose? Or even worse, I go into companies and they're like, I can't win because these Goliaths out there, they have an unfair advantage. But let's start with this concept of what is playing to win, all right? Have you ever been on a team that everyone is all in? Anybody been on a team like that? You play sports or anything like that, and everyone on the team is all in? Anyone? Man, it feels different, right? I've coached basketball also, particularly with my kids, and I've taken teams to championships, some with actually below average players. I don't even know how the hell we got to the championship. But those kids, everyone, they'd be crying if we lost. They'd be screaming at each other if people were I didn't have to coach. I just sit on the side and let them give each other a hard time. Let them tell each other where they were supposed to be. Let them call the plays, and then when it was time out or it was halftime, that was my time to coach. They got this because they were there to win. Or my niece, when she missed a perfect score in the SATs by 1 point, she retook it. She was pissed that she did not get a perfect score. That is playing to win. And see, what happens is when we start our companies, we're playing to win. We do everything it takes, and then success gets in our way. And our heads get big. And our hunger, while we're hungry, is not the same for many of us. And particularly everybody on our team, and we got to challenge them. And I was thinking back as I was creating and I was writing my book, and I'm like, man, I might be a fraud. And I'll tell you why. When I owned my first company, and we talked about, I mentioned in the video, the one I sold when I was 21, I was thinking about a story when I wanted to get it. I owned a typesetting graphic design company way back when, scoring 100% a quarter, and I wanted to get an advertising agency as a client. And everybody's like, Howard, you're 18, you're a nobody, you're not going to get any of these advertising agencies, you haven't earned the right yet to get, and I wanted to get one of the largest advertising agencies in our market. So I show up to this advertising agency, I go in the door, and to get the business, you got to go to the art director. So I go, this nice young lady sitting at the desk, and I'm like, I want to, and I knew the name of the art director, I don't remember anymore, this is a long time ago. And I asked to speak to the art director. She says, I'm sorry, he's not available today. I said, it's okay, I'll wait. And I sat in the lobby all day. And she kept telling me, Mr. Shore, he's not going to be available. I said, okay, I'll wait. And I realized this was going to be, I'm going to have to really slug this one out, right? And so the next day I showed up with a lunchbox. And she's like, oh crap, right? And I asked to speak with the same gentleman. By the way, this went on for 2 weeks. After 2 weeks, I was meeting everybody coming in and out of the office. I needed to talk to people, right? I was creating commotion up there. So she's like, I think you're gonna have to come up here. This guy, you wouldn't believe what's going on here. I'm eating food, I'm hanging out there, I'm using the restrooms now. This is pandemonium. So finally the guy comes out, he's like red in the face. He's like, what's wrong with you? Are you crazy? I said, no, I'm determined, I'm aggressive, I'm a lot of things, and I went down a whole list, and I said, I think if you look that up in the dictionary, I don't think it's crazy. He says, well, what the hell is it going to take to get you out of my lobby? You're disrupting the office. I said, well, you're going to have to give me business. He says, well, it's just not going to happen. I said, all right, here's what we're going to do. Give me 15 minutes back in your office and explain to me why the hell I'm not going to get any of your business. After that 15 minutes, I left with my first job. After a month, they became our largest client. And I got to be honest with everybody in this crowd, I don't do that stuff anymore. In the back of my mind, God, I've graduated. That's wrong. all right? If I'm playing to win, I'm doing everything I need to 10x. Activate Group, I own a software company in the restoration industry, I own an e-commerce business. Now, I don't do that stuff anymore as the CEO, but in the things that I do, I then sat down as I was writing that book and I said, where am I not doing the equivalent of that in my role? And I realized I was half. The next day, and one of the areas was marketing, I hired a much bigger marketing firm and I started doing the things and all of a sudden we started going like this again. The first thing I want you to do is I want you to open up that there's a little work page in the back. And I want you to think about where in your business might you be a little bit complacent and you're not fully playing to win. And if you did, maybe you're going to start going a little bit like this because you are not fully looking at all in and everybody all in. And I want you to write one thing down on that piece of paper, and that's the start of you really getting an extra $1 million today. Nice to meet you. Hey, Eric. All right, who here is still with me? Who here still thinks now they can make some money doing that, right? Did you find something good on that piece of paper?
I think everybody's answer should probably be a better coach, right?
Yeah? Well, that could be. That could be. But sometimes there's something bigger than that. Like mine was marketing. I'm like, God, big money there. I was not going heavy enough. I didn't have a big enough firm, so I went bigger. So this was another one. At Activate Group, one of our core values is trust is everything. And we really take this seriously. So every decision we make, every communication we have, every interaction, we want to think about, all right, 5 minutes from now, 5 months from now, 5 years from now, how is that going to affect our reputation? And if we don't like that answer, don't do it, right? But let me talk more about this thing about trust, all right? So the thing about trust is this. When trust goes down, things slow down and cost goes up. You all agree with that? All right? I don't care who you read, whether, Lighthouse has worked with Pat Lencioni for a number of years. He's got this book, 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. I'm a huge fan of it. The number one foundational pillar of a very effective team is trust. All right? Or Stephen Covey, R. Covey, the son of Stephen Covey, wrote a book about trust. Man, you read that book, and man, after I read that book, I realized how much work we all have to do. But I go from organization to organization, and the first thing we're cleaning up is all the trust messes. And when I go to organizations, and you talk to each leader, they think trust is always an issue for everybody but themselves. But the problem with trust is, trust is not just about doing what we say, doing the right thing. It's also how well do you create an environment of safety for every one of those individuals that work for you. So think about this. If someone doesn't feel safe, are they going to hit the gas really hard? No. They're going to slow down because they're worried about their butts, right? They spend more time in fear and covering their asses when they don't feel safe. And too many, and I don't know all of you in here, but too often I'm watching leaders and the way they communicate, their lack of clarity and expectation, their inconsistency in what our goals are and our priorities. It slows things down. Some people raise their voices. Some people demean people around other people. All these things lowers trust. And it may not be you, but if you allow one of your leaders on your team to be one of those people because they happen to be a top producer, you're actually creating a ripple effect in your organization. Because that one person may be a performer, but they're slowing everybody else down. Everybody else around them now has a lack of trust. So this trust thing is you have to get everybody, you've got to build an organization that builds up the fiber of trust for everyone, and every member of your team has to be a trust builder. We have to build trust amongst our employees, we have to build trust amongst our vendors, we have to build trust in our community, we have to build trust for our customers. And we have to think about how does every word we make, every action we take, every decision we make, and how we make those decisions affect trust. And I've actually had to slow down. I'm one of those fire-ready men. I'm one of those visionary guys. So I have a sounding board in my company. So every time I'm going to do something, or I think I'm going to change a commission structure, or I'm going to do something like that, I call Albert. Albert, he thinks through things a little bit slower than I do. And I'm like, Albert, all right, so before I make this decision, whose trust am I going to violate? And we go back and forth and we debate. All right, so how is this going to go through, and how might we communicate, and how might we do it before we implement it? And sometimes we decide we're not going to do it because maintaining trust sometimes is more important, and it will be more costly if we implement it than sometimes the cost savings we're going to try to do in implementing something, because it'll be more deadly for us in the long term, or a contract with a customer because we're so right. But the trust we break and the reverberations on that will be so large for us that we won't do it. So now the next exercise I want you to do is write down what's the one thing you could do in your organization, and it's probably worded better than I'm going to say it on the sheet, but what's the one thing you can do in your approach that can stimulate better trust in your organization, with your teams, with your customers. And every one of us can do something, and if you don't write something down on there, you are delusional. I'm going to tell you right now. And this will help you make more money, help you increase velocity in your team. So my next one is the elephant in the room. I used to get in a lot of trouble when I was in corporate. It was actually taboo in some of the corporations I worked in to speak up. It's a big core value of mine. Now, let me tell you what I mean by speaking up, though. It doesn't mean, I believe in being assertive versus being aggressive. I believe, you have to be responsible and use some tact and not be a mallet or a hammer when we're talking to people. And we need to be responsible when we speak up. However, we do need, and we need to encourage everyone in the organization to talk about the elephants. So if there's unproductive behaviors, we need to hear about it. Whether it's with customers, whether it's fellow coworkers, whatever. Because when we don't remove that, it goes back to that trust thing again. And by the way, they will not speak up if there's not trust. If they believe you're going to shoot the messenger, they're not going to speak up. If they believe they're going to bring something up in a meeting and you're going to shoot them down and they're going to get embarrassed, they're not going to speak up, and that kind of stuff. So this gets to how really good are your meetings. And by the way, if you're having meetings and you're the only one talking, you've got a trust issue, I'm going to tell you right now, very likely. And you have an engagement issue with, really, are these people all in? Because if they're all in and there's high trust, every one of you every day has real issues going on in your business. And I want everybody on my team speaking up. And you got to get everybody speaking up, because that's the only way you're going to increase the velocity and speed and acceleration in your businesses. We need to know what is going on with the customers, what is going on with employees. And that's the only way we can remove barriers and get rid of the fog. So the great companies we work with, there's a lot of contentious battles going in every week in meetings. And too often I go into companies and there's no conflict. It's like excuse fill in there. We didn't hit our numbers, it's the market's fault. This didn't happen, it's somebody else's fault. When we hit an elephant, they just dance around it. But not in the great companies, man. It's going, even at the lower levels, man, they're hitting their bosses. Man, there's conflict all day long, but it's constructive conflict. And we just have to teach the employees. I like to call them the lambs. We have to teach the lambs how to speak up. We want everybody, because we want everybody all in. So now the next thing I want you to write down on the piece of paper is, what are the obstacles in your organization that you now want to go back to the office to get more of the brutal facts to come out every day, every week in your meetings, so that you can increase acceleration? What is it about your culture that you want to start changing immediately so you get more brutal facts addressed weekly? That's your next assignment. Go get them. I'm proud of all of you because you're all writing. That means you're all in. You're all here to get better. That also means you all want to work less, which is good, because once you get this stuff implemented, you work less. That's the incentive. I like to say my best clients are smart, lazy people. So this is the last piece I'm going to hit on culture. There's other pieces, but these four I found when I look at the great companies, the ones that we see go like this and keep going like this, versus the ones that they do great, but then they do this or they're just good. The difference in the cultures are these four things I'm sharing with you. This last one is they create great environments, they care about their people, they do all those things, but results matter. They don't do it in like jerky ways, where it's like it's all about the numbers. But they let their employees know, listen, I'm going to give you a great work environment, I'm going to care about you, we're going to have great benefits, all that kind of stuff, but listen, you're here for a reason, and we have expectations. And so every single person in the company, not just salespeople who have quotas, but every single person in the company knows what's expected of them. And too often I go into companies, and then I can walk up to any employee and say, all right, so what are the two measures that tell you whether you have a good day or a good week? And they look at me with this blind stare. Like, what the hell are you talking about, dude? I have a lot of stuff to do right now. Stop bothering me. Have you seen my to-do list? They're not there for the to-do list. And actually, most of the stuff on their to-do list, get rid of it, because it's not going to move the needle on the two measures that you need them to move. And the clearer you can make it for them to see the biggest boulders you need them to move right now, it'll help them focus and help you get done what you need to. If you go back to the old 80-20 rule, 80% of the results you need come from 20% of the activities, they haven't figured out, and you probably haven't even figured out for each person in your company, what are those 20% of the things that each one of your people do that create 80% of the impact from their job. And whether it's a receptionist or a bookkeeper or whatever, every single person is there and they create contribution margin for your company, or they wouldn't be there. For every dollar we spend, we are supposed to get contribution margin. It's not expenses, it's investments. And I will hire as many people as possible as long as I get a contribution margin. But I have a responsibility to every person to help them understand how they produce that. So my challenge to you, have you done that in every seat in your company? And then are you consistently measuring the things weekly and monthly and keeping it posted so that those people have the satisfaction at the end of the week and the end of the month to know they did a good job? Or are they just exhausted? and more exhausted, and looking at that to-do list. So now, make a note down there. Is there anything you need to do? I like, there's a book written, it's called The 3x5 Coach. And I like the 3x5 card. It's an index card. It's 3x5. And on the front, we make our clients write, what's the mission of the role? And on the back of the card, what are those 2 to 3 measures and accountabilities that tell you whether that person is actually having a good day or a good week? And if you have to communicate them anything more than that, you're overcomplicating it. Something simple, folks. So go ahead and write something down there. So I'm going to fly us through the next 2 parts just to make sure you get it, but I just want to highlight for you, we've identified 4 ways to really increase the effectiveness of your teams and to create a great team versus a good team. Playing to win, trust is everything, face the brutal facts, and then to make sure that everybody knows what's expected of them. Now what I want to talk about is 2 other things that I think are important to stewardship, and I don't think they get the right attention. I don't want to teach you how to do this right now. I just want to get to teach you why they're important, because I got to be honest, when I was earlier in my career, I didn't take these 2 things seriously. I thought they were fluff, and I thought they were big company stuff, and then I realized why they were so big. The first one is purpose. So what I realized about purpose, and have any of you run a nonprofit? Have been the leader of a nonprofit? Anybody in here? So I've had to run a nonprofit and realized that, first of all, I was chair of Boy Scouts. I've also been the executive chair of board of a nonprofit. And what happens is you've now got a whole bunch of people working for you that is not getting paid. And now you've really got to rally them around a cause. Otherwise, they're not going to do a damn thing for you. They already got a full-time job. That was probably the most valuable thing I ever did for myself, was have to lead that way. That's probably the hardest leadership role I've ever played. And it really got me thinking about purpose and how well nonprofits did it and how poorly for-profits did, and obviously both sides can learn a lot from each other. So what I realized was it really gives direction, because purpose is really a centralizing idea. It's not an end state. It's an idea that we're trying to build around people, and it's that idea that wakes us up in the morning. Like for me, I am so excited about unlocking full potential of everybody in this room, everybody I meet, a valet, anyone I meet anywhere. If there's anything I can do that stimulates thought in them, that gets them to go and do more, man, that juices me up. And if you join my organization, that's got to get you excited, or don't join my organization. And we do that internally as well as externally. And what happens is, when you have purpose, man, you'll knock down walls to make that happen. You'll do anything, because it's not about money anymore. It's about getting and achieving that mission. I mean, I see people do this because they want to throw a party for their friend. That's purpose, by the way. You ever notice sometimes somebody's going to throw a party for like one of their best friends or a family member? Man, they're like all hours in the night planning this thing. They'll stay up and lose sleep. Or for a trip, planning a trip for yourself is purpose, right? My wife, I mean, she's a judge. She's the administrative judge for Dade County here for workers' comp. And I'm raising our kids, man, but our trips, every year our trips are our thing to do. Man, I'm like, why don't you hire a travel agent? We can afford it. She's saying, no, this has got to be exactly right. Every single minute of every day she's got planned before we get there. That's purposeful for her. And I got to tell you, man, we've done some major adventures. And she stays up late at night and every minute, and she goes to every site, and she gets into these chat groups, and I'm like, really? But for her, that's purpose. Right? And this is what, look, right? She gets it, right? And so when you get people rallied around a cause, they will do so much for you that it's amazing. But honestly, they're not going to get excited about at some point, and actually I have a client right now, the CEO's like mad at the COO because she's challenging the CEO to more greatness, and the CEO's like, why are you giving me such a hard time? I pay you so well. And the COO's like, it's not about that. You said we're after this great thing and we're after creating an amazing company. I don't care about the money anymore. I already make enough. So you can't, the carrot no longer works for me. I want purpose. And that's what all of your people are craving. So really, when you create a great purpose, it also separates your organization from every other organization. What makes people want to work for you and not another company, and chooses possibly your industry over another company. And that's why it's so important for you to do this. And this is where, when Gallup was talking, those employees don't understand why here. So they're not excited about the future. It's just work, it's just tasks. So of course you're going to get half. But man, when you can drive them towards that, that's great. And so here's some examples, and I'm just going to share this slide, and I'm going to move on to the next concept. You know, think about how Airbnb disrupted an industry. Think about how exciting that would be if you're in a company and CEO comes to you and says, listen, you know, we're a startup, but in about 5 years, we're gonna rent more rooms than Hilton, and we're not even gonna have any real estate. You with me? Holy cow. And they just came along, and I gotta tell you, they were a godsend for us. We take our entire family, usually parents, kids, friends. We need lots of rooms, and we don't want to eat out all the time. So when Airbnb cropped up, man, that saved me a ton of money, because I like everybody there. And the kids, they want pizza. You know, they wanted crap, and that's not where I wanted to eat. So you get them the food, and then we went out. This was the best thing on the planet. So Airbnb was a great thing for us. Amazon, they changed service forever. We can get anything, anywhere, pretty much in 24 hours, 48 the worst. Think about that. Think about how they've changed. I mean, we used to put Nordstrom up there, and that's when you thought about service, but now, click of the button, my wife goes nuts. I get a box every day, but it's me. She's like, what are all these boxes? Every day there's a new one. I'm not even there. She's going to get one today, too. Because it's too easy for me. I'm sitting in the room in the hotel. I got nothing to do. Bloop. I get an idea. I got another one. Bloop. It's too easy to find. It's too easy to click. I buy probably a lot more stuff today than I ever would have because it's too easy to click. And then, you know, a few of the other ones, one of the boards I was on, and I'm really passionate about, City Year. They look at the children in the inner cities, and they realized that these children, it's much harder for them to get an excellent education, and so they built a solution for that. And I'm very passionate about that. And so that they're changing the world. And then we got a few more. And the last one, the reason I love the last one is when you become a verb, you deserve to be on the screen. All right? So that's that, and then these are just some examples of some common companies and how they define their purpose, so you guys can take a picture of that. It's really important for you to define a purpose so that you're not just selling insurance. I was with a crowd, 1,000 CEOs last month, and we're with this crowd. I forget the name of the speaker right now, but he's a marketing guru, and he's talking about an insurance company in Phoenix and how they're national, and how they're adding 2,000 policies a year. But he asked the crowd, he says, all right, of all 1,000 CEOs in there, how many of you like buying insurance? No hands went up. I'm sure you guys weren't surprised. So your employees are not going to get excited about selling insurance either. You have to have a different purpose. And you've got to get them excited about it. And you've got to be doing something different in your business than everybody else in your industry, and that will get them compelled to do it. So it's your big idea about what pisses you off in your industry, and you want to make that difference and make it different. And then the last thing is culture. So we do a lot of things for culture to do it, and one of the things we talk about a lot is core values. And core values is how we treat others. Inside, outside, everywhere. It's character traits though, folks. Don't confuse core values with your performance metrics that you would put in people's performance metrics. These are the moral and performance character traits that when you're not looking, you want everybody to act. And when they do that and everybody acts the same way, so you're cult-like, you never have to worry about your customers being taken care of, your employees being taken care of. And when you do that, it actually can become a brand as well. And this is super important that you not only define these clearly and well, you measure every employee as they either performed it or they didn't. There's no, I'm half pregnant. You're pregnant or you're not. Okay? This is really important. And measure every single employee. So if you write something out and you say, it's not crystal clear that you can measure every employee that they are or they are not consistently performing those, you didn't define your core value clearly enough. Because you have to measure everybody every quarter. If they're not consistent with that, you need to get them on track, because it's like cancer in your body. They infect everybody else. And if you allow some people not to do it and others do it, then it's not really core. Really, really important. So what I learned about core values is there's really 3 rules we need to follow with core values. First of all, us as leaders, if we don't resemble them, they don't exist. Second, we have to repeat ourselves constantly. Think about your kids. How many of you have kids in here? All right. Even still today, both of mine are in college, I still have to remind them to brush their teeth. One of them just came back and they had 4 cavities. I'm like, what happened? I sent you to college. You go there for 1 year, 4 cavities. It's like, did you ever brush while you were there? Right? So it's the same thing with your core values. You have to constantly have a system of indoctrinating this every single day, every single week. We do it by giving constant, we call it strategic praise. And you're working the core values into that strategic praise and showing them how it causes the end result. And we're tying these core values in there, and every week we're talking about them in everything we do, because they will forget. And if they don't know what they are and they can't recite them on a moment's notice, they won't do them. So it's really, really important. So here's the thing. If you're not willing to take a financial hit, so if you're not willing to fire your top performer over it, then it's not core. If you're not willing to fire anybody in your company over it, it's not core. And if it's not alive in your company today, it's just a hope and a prayer. It's not a core value. A couple of things I like to warn people as you're setting these, just real quick, is choose words that's your language. Like, so speak up, that's me. Trust is everything. You'll hear me say that constantly. If you don't use the word integrity all the time, just because everybody else uses that word doesn't mean that's your word. But integrity is probably important to you. Use words and phrases that are important to you. So a good example is, I'm walking in a networking event. Some guy hands me a card, and on the back of the card are these core values. And just in case you want to go to this website, and I always forget the website, it's phase2online.com. So I get to this website, I get this card, and on the back of it, everybody you meet is Brian Blake. And some other crazy core values. I'm like, you do tell. All right, so already it's a conversation starter. So Brian Blake applied for a job at this company, and he didn't get it. But he had such a remarkable experience. He goes to work for a pump supply company, then needs their services 2 years later. Never forgot this company. So he goes back. They changed names because they did a merger. He still found them. And then he hired them. He became their largest customer, and for years was a huge testimonial. All because of the experience he had during the interview process. So the CEO used this as a legend story. And what he wanted every employee to know is, listen, everywhere you go, whether you're in the ball field, every interaction you have, we want you to remember that the person you're meeting may be the next Brian Blake. What I want you to get from this example is your core values need to be that clear and that memorable. Because now, would you forget that story? No, you want all your employees to go back and you want them to treat everybody that way because they made somebody they didn't hire a raving fan. You need to do that in your business, right? I think that applies to insurance, doesn't it? I see too many core values and they're not clear. They're not measurable. They don't have stories that go with it. And then even the leadership team doesn't know how to apply them. These are more common ones that you see, but you can see you can measure it. You know, we make it happen. So if you got an employee that's consistently, I had to go home, you know, they, when you really need them, they call in sick. They kind of finish the job, but then they kind of leave it to the end of the week. They didn't make it happen, right? We have that same core value, by the way. I hate excuses. And we have stories that go underneath this. So you got to have core values like these. And more moral character traits, I think, than performance character traits I recommend. And I would go there. So for you to get top performance out of your organization, for you to create a clear road, for you to get unlock potential out of every employee, it starts with stewardship. It starts with team health, executive team health first, then all the other teams. Everybody needs purpose. We all want purpose in our life. We all want meaning. We don't want a job. And then when you create your core values, we want to work with like people in a right environment, right? So when you create the right core values, if you asked every employee, would you want to work with anybody that didn't do these things? Their answer would be, of course not. That's when you know you've got it. And you wouldn't want to work with anybody that's not like that. That's when you're creating an environment that allows people to be free. And when you allow anything less than that, you are not going to get peak performance. You're going to get less. You're going to get half. You're going to get that 33%. So that's where I want to challenge you. So I shared with you today, we have a methodology. It's in my book. There's really 5 plates we spin as CEOs. Stewardship's only one of those plates. And by the way, we can't ignore any of these plates when we're working on the business. The second plate is strategy. Do we have a unique mix of value that we bring to the end customer that provides us with a remarkable amount of profit? That's strategy. Human capital management, don't treat your people as resources, treat them as assets. We throw away resources. And human capital management is about how do we acquire the best assets, onboard them properly, keep and grow them, and then get that return I talked about on that assets. That's the entire cycle, right? And then we do planning. Planning is just about prioritization and making sure that your priorities and goals are aligned in the long and short term, and then they are clear to everyone. Many times they're not, just a few people on the leadership team. And then accountability is just making sure that all of those goals are going to happen. And we got to get all of those plates right, and it's not easy, folks. You require mastery in all of those, and we're constantly, as leaders, working on all of these things. Are you all still with me on this? You know, it's not easy. That's why it's easier to work on our day job. And that's why I wrote that book, because I realized that was the secret as managers to unlock the full potential of our employees. So I wrote my first book, Your Business is a Leaky Bucket, got it to a bestseller status, and that explains to you and shows you that every business, no matter how great you are, has leaks, whether you're $1 million or $1 billion or above. And all companies have those 15 leaks that are in the book. This book is now coming out, and I'm really excited to share that with you, and I hope you read it, because it's worth millions to you. If you can self-implement it, I put it in there, and it actually points you to our tools. I realized we can't get to everybody, so we want people to just self-implement. If you apply that, the stuff that I'm talking about in there is in there. If you decide you read this, you don't want to wait till it comes out, or you want a better price now, you can actually go and pre-order online and get it for the rest of your team. Did I deliver today and bring you the value of ways that you can increase your business? Let me know. All right, thank you.